は一カット。ほらほら。
Welcome everybody, and happy Thanksgiving. Today we're going to be going over another data mine of the newest collaboration event, Atelier Ryza, which will have characters from Atelier Ryza 2 and 3. We have a lot to cover today. We have 7 new ships, 11 new auxiliary equipment, 6 new augment modules, and a special event gimmick synthesizing. Before I get started, I just want to say welcome to any new players who joined because of the Atelier Ryza event. If this is your first Azur Lane video here, feel free to subscribe to get more Azur Lane content if you enjoy the game. Alright, and let's get right into it because this is going to be a long video. We got a lot to cover. First things first, outside of the Atelier Ryza collab event, we will be getting a new cruise mission season. This will include Fortune Meta, which we have full information on in this data mine because she was added to the game today, but will not be obtainable until December 1st. Event-wise, we got a lot going on, but we'll take it step by step. First of all, the event ships will get new skins. That is all except for Kala, which I don't know why she got forgotten. The event shop is pretty standard. We have our one obtainable SR, which for this event is Klaudia, cog arrays, gear skins, universal PR plates, augment module cores, and aux plates. Buy it out if you can. The milestone accumulation rewards will be very similar to usual. Kala will be the event ship that you can get via this method. Now let's talk about kind of the special part about the maps here. We'll have maps T1 through T5. Once you complete T5, you will have access to TH maps. There will be 5 of them. They will be the same difficulty as T5. All of them will have different drops. In terms of equipment, all of the drops are not really worth it, so it's not going to be something you're going to grind for gear drops. However, there are specific special Ryza material drops that also drop from TH1 to TH5. These can be used in a new event-only synthesizing mechanic. Basically in maps TH1 through TH5, when the boss appears, a gathering node will also appear, which you can go to collect the materials. If you are in auto mode, the auto feature bot should collect the items. Now there are a few things that you can use these items for in the Alchemist's Atelier. One of them is the Core Nexus, which unlocks after you have beaten T5. These allow you to put cores that give various effects, and these will apply bonuses to all of your fleets for any of the gathering sites, which is TH1 to TH5, the SP mode, and the EX stages. So that should be interesting to use these buffs for an EX stage. Unlike most skills in Azur Lane, these core buffs will stack. This means you can use multiples to get more powerful buffs. On top of the cores, you can actually use recipes to synthesize a bunch of different items, including collab limited augment modules and auxiliary gears. There are 11 auxiliary gears, and each of the new ships has an augment module releasing, which makes 6. Keep in mind, these are event exclusive. It's pretty common for auxiliary gears to be event exclusive. However, these will be the first augment modules that are going to be locked exclusively to an event. And given it's a collab event, it will probably never come back. Making sure that you get all of these gears is probably vital if they are important to you. And my guess is if you have any of these collab ships that you're going to want to be using permanently, you're going to want their upgraded augment module. So it's going to be part of getting that ship. So just keep that in mind that you are going to need to craft these and you are on a time limit. Make sure you get them done before the end of the event. Another thing to note about these things that you can craft in the Atelier's Alchemist is there will be a request board that you'll need to complete in order to get very rare items that will not drop from the maps. These will be missions that will unlock daily for the first week of the event, and you can use them to craft the special items that you will need to complete some of the synthesis. These can be completed multiple times, so just keep that in mind. On top of that, we are actually getting 2 other mini events. Pooney's Fantastic Adventure is basically when you are feeding the slime, and you'll get some rewards. And we'll also have a separate mini game that looks a lot like Bomberman. And that kind of sums up what we're going to be having in terms of the event mechanics coming. Also, before I get into the individual ships, I just want to make a reminder that this is Black Friday sale week. If you didn't notice, most of the previous skins have been rerun so that you can now purchase them again. And if you don't have the money to purchase them now, I'd like you to be made aware of this giveaway on Twitter. 20 people will get free gems. you can enter by retweeting. And with that, let's finally get into the ships. Also, a reminder that all of the Ryza ships have a special new mechanic called AP. Think of this like stamina. Some of the skills they have will increase their AP over time, and a lot of their barrages and very powerful skills will reduce their AP, and it can only be triggered when they have enough AP to pay for the skill. This is a new type of mechanic for characters in Azur Lane. So let's start off with the banner leader, Ryza. She's going to be an SR and is designated as a light cruiser. Stat-wise is actually pretty solid. I see that she's more focused on torpedoes than anything. She has a pretty good torpedo efficiency stat, and her torpedo stat is not bad either. She's got a good chunk of HP. I would say she's probably around that level of Belfast, or maybe a little bit more powerful. She has like really good survivability from anti-air too. Not really that bad stats here. Not amazing, but still pretty good. One thing to note that's pretty special about her is she can actually equip 4 auxiliaries. Most light cruisers can only equip 2 auxiliaries. She can actually swap out her torpedoes or her anti-air gun to get extra auxiliaries, which makes sense because we have 11 auxiliaries coming, 10 of which are basically Ryza exclusive equipment. So she'll get to equip a variety of them if they're any good. Alright, skill number 1. When one of her equipped items fires a barrage, and these are items that are specific to this event, those Ryza items, if her AP is greater than or equal to 6, she can spend it to fire a barrage, and it has a 3-second cooldown. If you're wondering what her AP generation looks like, her third skill says that she gains 8 AP every 4 main gun attacks. It also gives her 12% boost to her firepower, anti-air, and evasion, which is a really good stat boost. She needed that. And so she should have plenty of AP. If you equip her with fast-firing guns, she can get that AP pretty quick. She's getting 8 every time that it triggers, and then she has to spend 6. This is a funky way to do a barrage, but it just seems like she's going to have a consistent set of barrages to go with, just with an interesting mechanic to go along with it this time. Skill number 2 is the only one we haven't gone over yet. Atelier ships in your fleet will get 20% crit rate for attacks that are triggered by items, and item barrages are enhanced. So this isn't like for all of the damage that all of the Atelier Ryza ships do, otherwise that would be busted. It's only for the Atelier Ryza ships that have equipments that trigger barrages, which once again, we have like basically 10 that are coming, so later in the video we'll find out how good they are, but this is basically going to enhance all of them. So it seems like she is someone that you're going to need if you want to build an Atelier Ryza fleet so that she can buff everybody. Also in this skill, enemies with item mark, which is something I assume some of these items we will be reviewing later can do and mark enemies. So this would be a specific enemy that gets marked by an item. They take 10% more damage from Atelier ships, and that's straight damage from all forms from all of the girls. So basically, if you have an Atelier item that can mark the enemy, you can also give them 10% more damage from all of your Atelier girls. Honestly, as a leadership here, this ship is interesting. It's also kind of like a faction buffer, very small. And this is going to live or die by how powerful the auxiliaries that we are going to go over later. She can equip 4 of them. I assume like Rika, we are probably going to want to equip a lot of them. Overall, I like her. If you plan on playing Ryza girls, I expect that you will need this ship. Alright, with that, let's move on to the next ship, which will be Klaudia. She will be available in the event shop as well, so she's kind of like a free ship. She's a light aircraft carrier, interesting for an event. In terms of stats, she's a weaker centaur with less HP and less aviation, as well as 3 fighters and 4 torpedo bombers instead of 4 fighters and 4 torpedo bombers. Her efficiencies are average. The only thing that stands out is her reload's pretty good. However, like most light carriers, she's going to live or die by her skills. Alright, skill number 1. Every 10 seconds, if her AP is 10 or greater, she can spend that 10 AP to fire a barrage, and enemies hit by that barrage are slowed by 15% for 5 seconds. So she has a slow and a barrage. That's cool. Her AP skill gives her 8 AP every 8 seconds, as well as 15% aviation and 15% hit stat. That is very important. Both of those were things that she was lacking in her base stats, so that skill being just a passive is needed. The weird part about how her AP works here is she's getting 8 every 8 seconds, and that is batched, and she needs 10 to unlock her skill. which means in some cases, even though it says every 10 seconds, you will need to actually wait 16 seconds so that she can trigger her batch collect of AP twice. All right, let's move on to her final skill here. At the start of battle, ooh, I like where this is going, plus 10 AP. Okay, so that gives her first skill just preloaded basically. Obviously, she has to wait the 10 seconds, but it kind of negates what I was talking about earlier, at least for her first trigger. Also at the start of the battle, she's going to heal all of your ships for 5% of their HP. Okay, so she's a healer light carrier. Watch out, Perseus and Unicorn. Atelier ships are going to heal 7% instead of the 5%. This is a pretty nice heal. It also heals backliners, which is very important. And there's nothing that really stops it. It just comes right at the beginning of the battle. It actually pairs really nicely with the recent addition of Elbion. So if you picked her up recently, then you could also use this ship with Elbion. Also, when she launches an airstrike, she can heal the Vanguard for 5% of their HP. And Atelier ships will be 7% once again. So now she has double healing, one at the start of the battle for free, and every time that she has an airstrike afterward, her reload's pretty good, so she's actually a very strong healer off of this skill. And this skill's not done yet. When a ship in your fleet falls below 30% HP, she gets 10 AP, which is great for that first skills that basically guarantees that it will trigger at the next 10-second mark. And more importantly, it will heal that ship that is below 30% HP by 5% of their HP, and this will only trigger once per battle. So she literally has a triple heal in this skill. This is quite possibly one of the best heal skills in the game. At the start of the battle, you heal everybody, including the main fleet, 5%. Then every airstrike, you heal the Vanguard, which is the one that's going to be taking the most damage, 5%. And if anyone is losing a lot of damage and is below 30% HP, 5% heal. This ship is very good, and it has a slowing barrage. One that's going to help against suicide boats in PvE if, she's a carrier, so she needs some help there. And two, who doesn't like a slow for bosses? Well, this ship is really nice. She's not really a boss fleet ship, so the slow is not as good as particularly some of the ships you might want to use in a boss fleet. But holy crap, that is a really good heal. This ship very well might be the best ship at the event. Very powerful. I don't know if she replaces Perseus, but if you don't have a Perseus, definitely pick it up. I think it's possible that she's probably better than Unicorn Retrofit. That's going to be very tight, but this is like a ship that you definitely probably should pick up, even if you're not into Atelier Ryza. All right, moving on, we're going to talk about the next girl, Patricia. She is an SR battleship, and stat-wise, we've been getting a lot of UR battleships lately, and she doesn't really stack up to those, which you wouldn't expect her to because she's an SR, not a UR, but when you've been getting like Ulrich and New Jersey and Musashi lately, she seems a little lackluster. But in terms of an SR battleship, she probably fits the standard bill here with her stats. So let's move on to her skills. Skill number 1, when she fires her main gun, so she's a barrage battleship, if her AP is greater than 10, she can spend it to have a slash barrage. This barrage has a 100% crit rate and has a vampire skill in which she will heal 5% of the damage she deals. Importantly, we have to look at what her rate of gaining AP is. She gains 5 AP every 9 seconds. That skill also gives her 15% firepower and 15% hit stat. Both are stats that a battleship really cares about, so that's good. I mean, she's going to be waiting 18 seconds for all of her AP to load up, which means she is a barrage battleship, but running any barrage gun that is going to be faster than 18 seconds is pointless. In fact, it's actually detrimental to what she's trying to do. So just make sure that she has a gun that's going to shoot and fire as close to, but not less than 18 seconds. Also keep in mind of those high performance fire control radars. Her last skill, Atelier ships in the fleet gain 15% crit rate against enemies that are marked by an Atelier item. Also, she increases the damage she deals as her HP lowers. This maxes out at 20% plus damage. Finally, Atelier main fleet ships have enhanced attacks the first time they spend AP. So this only includes Klaudia and the yet-to-be-reviewed Serria. On top of that, she gets 15 evasion stat, which is nice for her survivability. Overall, this is a pretty solid above-average barrage battleship. Nothing to write home about. It's not going to change any of the PvP meta. Is it going to be anything in Tier 1? Definitely not. But it's good enough that it can be used in pretty much all of the content in the game. So if you're brand new to the game and you have yet to have an event-exclusive barrage battleship, this would be a great big ticket item for you to pick up, and it will help you clear a bunch of the content, especially the mid-game portion of the game. If you are close to 100% collection, this ship is probably not going to be something you're going to use unless you are specifically looking for an Atelier Ryza fleet. So pick up based on your needs and your cube level. All right, let's move on to the final SR of the event. And luckily this one doesn't need any cubes to get. You can get her through the accumulation rewards. She is also the only girl from Atelier Ryza 3 in this collab. On top of that, she is the first SR large cruiser. All the other ones are DRs or URs, so not Rainbow. And she's also the first collab large cruiser as well. So a couple different firsts for this Kala girl. With her stats, certainly she seems weaker than all of the other large cruisers in the game. They're all Rainbow rarity and she is Gold rarity. You can especially see this in her health pool, as well as her firepower. And so that can feel a little disappointing even if it's expected. However, keep in mind, she's a large cruiser, and those ships are so much better than a lot of the other class ships for the Vanguard, like heavy cruisers and light cruisers. So even though in her class, she's probably going to be the weakest one, save for some really powerful skills, she's still going to be a lot better than other classes you could use in the same slot. So with that, let's move on to her skills. Every 6 times she fires her secondary guns, which is her light cruiser gun, if her AP is 10 or greater, she can spend that to launch a barrage. If she is the lead ship and the Vanguard contains other ships, after her barrage triggers, the rear ship loses 50 HP and deals 8% more damage for 5 seconds. So this means she probably wants to be in the lead ship and 8% more damage outright. This is really cool. And it isn't locked to Atelier girls, which is very important here. So you could use this with a different, more powerful girl like a Gear or Kronk or something like that. And it can be used with torpedoes, so it could in theory be used with like Shimikaze or some crazy stuff like that. If this ship is not the lead ship, it targets the lead ship for that damage. So she can actually be off lead, and you can have your lead ship do all of the damage, an extra 8% for 5 seconds. I feel like you'd have to get really technical with all of the timing. You gotta, figure out what the light cruiser gun she has is and how it fires every 6 times and the universal cooldowns, because you'll have like a 5-second window that you can like get somebody else in for extra damage. In theory, this could be pretty good. It does seem like it would take a little bit of effort to line up and only in specific situations. And this is, once again, you have to make sure the AP is above 10, so sometimes that might get funky. Fortunately, she gains 10 AP every 4 times the main gun attacks in her 3rd skill, and it also gives her plus 10% damage to sirens, which is really odd because that's like almost a PR skill, or basically a light version of that. So she feels a lot like a light version of Azuma right now, and that like really hits that home. Fortunately, because it says every 4 times the main gun attacks, that should be pretty decent. She obviously can equip large cruiser guns, and that will make this slower, which might not line up with the 6 times the secondary gun fires. So once again, you have to get really technical about the 4 times you're firing the main gun so you can get your 10 AP. The 6 times you're firing the secondary gun, you got to worry about universal cooldowns, and then you got to make sure whatever ship you're trying to buff that 8% happens to have a bulk of its damage, for example, Shimikaze firing her torpedoes in that 5-second window. Kind of complicated to line up all properly, but if you do, an extra 8% more damage is nice. All right, let's move on to her final skill. If she is the lead ship and the Vanguard contains other ships, so they really don't want her to be used alone. They keep putting that preface in there for the requirements. When attacks from items hit the enemy, she heals the rear ship by 5%, and it has a 12% cooldown. So basically, she can be a healer if she's equipped with one of those Barrage Atelier items. And the interesting part about this is she can equip those items in her auxiliary slot, and that makes her able to heal when she barrages. You don't need to have any other Atelier ships to trigger this. She doesn't need anything else. She is an Atelier ship, so she can get those barrages, and she can heal any ship regardless. So there's actually a lot of healing in this collab event. If this ship is not the lead ship, you can target the lead ship instead. So basically she can heal the lead ship if she's not the lead ship. It also gives her 15% anti-air and evasion. Both are great survivability stats, especially for a large cruiser like herself. Overall, this ship is pretty decent too. I really like that heal. That first skill has a lot of potential, but it requires a lot of setup, so you have to make sure that you do that properly. I think this ship's a decent pickup. Once again, if you just play the event though, this should be pretty easy to get. All right, moving on, we have 2 elite ships, which of course are the hardest ships to get in the gacha, always, for some reason. The first one is Lila, and as expected, she is a heavy cruiser. Looking at her stat-wise is pretty bad. She is a torpedo heavy cruiser, that's never great, and her stats are pretty abysmal, so let's hope she has some funky skill that's cool, but I don't think this ship's gonna be very good. Waifu of her meta, am I right? When she fires her main gun, if her AP is greater than or equal to 5, she can spend it, and she selects an element that's not been selected yet between fire, ice, wind, and thunder, and she gets a buff based on that, and as well as fires a barrage of that type of element with a 5-second cooldown here. Okay, this is very strange, but just basically a special elemental barrage. In terms of her AP, she gets 8 AP whenever she fires her torpedoes, which is nice because she has a preloaded set, so that should make sure that she has enough for that first barrage when she fires her main gun. But she's probably gonna have to wait a while for that second set of torpedoes to fire. Maybe you put some fast firing torpedoes on her to like give her more AP. I mean, who am I kidding? This ship is pretty bad. She also gets 15% firepower and torpedoes, so that helps for her DPS a little bit. But overall, the first 2 skills not that great. So let's move on to her final skill. Every 10 seconds, she gets plus 5% evasion. This stacks up to 3 times, so a max of 15% evasion. For every elemental buff she has, and there are 4, so this stacks at most 4 times, she receives 3% extra damage dealt, so 12% damage dealt maximum. This is, of course, after the main gun fires 4 times and she's had enough AP, which you'll need at least 3 fires of the torpedo to get that much AP. Yeah, I mean, she got a little bit better as I read, but she's still pretty bad. This is collection tier only. And not even like Fleet Tech collection tier, because these are collab event ships and they do not contribute towards Fleet Tech. All right, the last of the event ships is Serria. She is an elite aircraft carrier, and stat-wise, holy crap, she's bad. She does have her standard 2 fighters, 3 dive bombers, and 3 torpedo bombers for a loadout of planes, similar to Saratoga, although much worse efficiencies there. She doesn't even reach 400 aviation. The freaking light carrier in this event reached 400 aviation, so stat-wise, she's trash. I doubt her skills will make a difference, but let's take a look. Skill number 1, when gaining a spirit buff, fire a barrage, and it has a 5-second cooldown. Well, I have no idea what a spirit buff is, but I'm assuming one of these other skills gives her a spirit buff, so it's just a barrage whenever that triggers. So let's see. Skill number 2, Atelier ships in the fleet take 10% less shelling and torpedo damage from enemies with item marking. I thought for a brief second there while I was reading this it was going to be good, but it's only for Atelier girls, only shelling and torpedo damage, and most importantly, only from enemies that are marked with the barrage items. So this went from 10% damage reduction universal, yay, to not very good and very situational, but usable. Also, when she spends AP or an airstrike, she gets a stack of the spirit buff, and it can stack 5 times. So that means that she can only have that first barrage 5 times max, which is interesting that there's even a cooldown on that. But anyway, you can stack it 5 times only. It has a 1-second cooldown, so you can in theory stack multiple times and then not get the barrage from the first skill. Okay, every spirit buff that she gets to deal an extra 2% damage, so that's 10% extra damage dealt total, and then she also gets 1% less damage taken, so that's a 5% damage reduction to only herself. Am I missing something here? Because it says on spending AP or an airstrike. Obviously, airstrikes are fine, but when is she spending AP? She's gaining all this AP, but when is she spending it? So that completes all of the collab ships. However, all of them are getting augment modules. So let's go over those augment modules so you can see their buffs immediately. All right, starting off with Ryza. She gets an augment module that gives her extra firepower and reload. That's very nice. Her skill is, at the start of the battle, she triggers a random equipped Atelier item's skill and it bypasses the cooldown. So I think it's pretty clear at this point that there are going to be a lot of barrages from these new items that are coming out for Atelier girls. It basically allows her to fire a barrage right at the beginning, which is important because she needs to fire barrages for all of her stuff. And with 4 auxiliary slots, you're probably going to be having a lot to choose from. Interestingly enough, though, if there's one that's super good and powerful and the other ones aren't, then maybe you just don't. And it could be any skill, so that could be really interesting if you just equip like one Atelier Ryza equipment, and then it will just guarantee to pick that one every time. This seems amazing and a must pick up if you want to use Ryza. Also, she gains 10 AP every 4 main gun shots instead of 8. And the second time that her first skill triggers, she will fire an ultimate attack barrage, which is just extra damage. Honestly, this is a must pick up augment module for Ryza. And I will say this, it makes her a lot better depending on how powerful the new event exclusive equipment is. So Ryza got a very big boost here with this augment module. Next up, we'll go over Klaudia's augment module. This is the one I'm probably most excited to look at because on my initial look of all of these girls' stats and skills, she's the one that I think is probably the most powerful, or at least my largest target. It gives her aviation and reload stat. Those are the 2 that I'd want on this healing girl that needs, reload to fire that airstrike faster. So just that is basically required. But when an equipped item triggers, 50% chance to gain an extra 10 AP. 10 AP is exactly how much she needs to spend for her slow barrage. And she also starts with 10 AP at the beginning, so if this is able to trigger, you're going to be pretty set on AP because she's also gaining passive AP gain from one of her skills. It's only 50% chance, so who likes the odds? But really, this is going to give her a chance of basically just guaranteeing she'll have the slow barrage for the whole battle. Also, she gets an upgraded skill. After she fires her first barrage, the second time she does one of the fatal drives. So this seems to be kind of a theme here that they get these all-out attacks when it fires the barrage, a second time. Given her barrages every 10 seconds, that basically means at the 20-second mark, she's going to get a really big barrage. This augment module is not super good, but, Klaudia was definitely a very powerful healer, didn't necessarily need all of this, but who doesn't like a reload stat? So obviously pick this up. All right, moving on, we'll talk about Patricia's augment module. She's a battleship, she's getting hit, stat, and firepower. This kind of makes up for some of the stats that she might have been lacking on her base. So this is going to be guaranteed you're going to probably equip this because who doesn't like free stats? When her HP falls under 30%, her evasion rate goes up by 5% for the rest of the battle. I mean, I like evasion rate, but it's only 5%, and I never like my battleship going below 30% HP. Sure, in theory, does it increase her survivability? Yes, but this skill is not going to be triggered very often, I don't think, and it's pretty useless to me. However, her enhanced skill seems pretty good here. She's going to get 10 AP every 9 seconds instead of 5. That is doubling the AP that she's able to gain, and it helps for her other skills, which 5 is not enough for at the 9-second mark, and 10 is. This means now she won't have to wait 18 seconds. This means that now you will be able to use better barrage guns or faster barrage guns and be able to use the high-performance fire control radar without worry. Like, nothing's going to be firing less than 9 seconds. So this augment module is really important for making her a true barrage battleship when you want to use those really fast barrage guns. So yeah, this definitely is a need for her to pick up. Of course, it also makes her like ultimate attack. The second time she fires her first barrage, she gets the fatal drive barrage, so it's more powerful the second time. So that's pretty standard. All right, moving on to the last SR, and that is Kala. This one's going to give HP and evasion, so this is going for the survivability aspect of Kala, which is, something that she probably needs, especially with her lower HP pool and everything. Her skill, 50% chance upon taking fatal damage to avoid that damage and evade all attacks, basically go invincible for 5 seconds. She heals 200 HP afterwards, so she's not going to die instantly, like say with the Manju item. And this triggers once per battle, obviously. This is really interesting. This is like very close to PvP material, but like I don't like it being 50% chance. I guess it's like kind of better than Eldritch. but I don't know how I feel about this. It seems like nothing that you would ever use in a legit like PvE battle that you're completely set up for. It's speaking to me because it's invincibility for 5 seconds and not dying, but I don't know how practical this is. I don't think there's any situation in PvE where you're like, yeah, I totally want to roll the dice on a 50-50 coin flip on whether or not I get to like survive, or I could just use like a more powerful ship. And in PvP, like, you have the Manju item and other options that are 100%. Like Hiru is 100%. So like 50%, is it that good? I don't know. So this is interesting. I like it, but I don't know how practically this makes her like that much better. Also, she gains 10 AP now every 2 main gun attacks instead of 4. And she has her barrage trigger, but this is the 3rd time instead of the 2nd time like the other ones. She fires her ultimate attack and she buffs all other Atelier ships for 3 seconds. And if they are buffed, if they would sink during those 3 seconds, you can consume the buff to evade all attacks for 3 seconds and heal them by 2%. So this part's actually probably the most interesting. So basically, after her 3rd fire of her barrage, she gets a 3-second window where she basically gives all of your Atelier girls an invincibility heal Manju item. It's only for those 3 seconds. It only protects them for 3 seconds if they were to die in that 3 seconds, and only heals them 2%. It's only after that 3rd barrage trigger, which, as a reminder, would be 18 fires of the secondary gun, which will be her light cruiser gun. This skill, once again, is kind of one of those like, oh my gosh, it speaks to me. I can give invincibility to all of my Atelier girls, and it's definitely something I would definitely put in an Atelier only fleet. I mean, you kind of have to because there's 6 ships in a fleet and 6 Atelier girls, but I don't know. It's not really going to be useful in any sense of the manner. I mean, getting 10 AP every 2 main gun attacks instead of 4 is actually important. And that's probably, other than the stats, the most important part of this augment module. But holy crap, the first time that this would actually trigger on another girl, this would be hilarious. Like, I could just imagine you're in this super fight boss and you're like totally overclassed. You're dying. Your Atelier girls are going to die because they're weaker. And then you just have this skill trigger and you're like, haha, they all go invincible and heal. Like, just totally anime god mode there. But this augment module doesn't make her especially good. It just makes her really funky to play with, and I like that. Actually, for a collab event, that is what I like. So like, don't take this as me being like, they shouldn't do this. This is like very fun character design for this event, and I appreciate it. Just not necessarily like amazing, you need to pick it up. It's more like gimmick, have fun. All right, our augment module for Lila is going to give her firepower and hit stat. And for every element buff she has, she's going to reduce her damage taken by 2%. That stacks up to 4 times, so that's 8%. And she will not lose this buff when she consumes her element buffs, which I think kind of leads to this next change. So when she fires her first barrage 4 times. So we started off 2 times for the SRs, and then the large cruiser was 3 times for Kala, and now we're into 4 times. Like, it just keeps going up, man. Anyway, when it fires 4 times, you have your ultimate barrage. It consumes the element buffs, so you lose those element buffs for her skill, which sounds awful. Now, the augment module specifically says that she doesn't lose the skill when you lose the element buffs for the augment module, but if you lose her base skill buffs, that's pretty bad. I mean, you're gonna take it because why not, but this doesn't change her from being bad. Finally, we have Serria. Gives her aviation and hit stat. Those are good for her DPS. For the first 50 seconds of the battle, she gets minus 5% damage taken and plus 10% damage dealt. That is quite possibly one of the most powerful augment module skills to date. It just sucks that it has to go on Serria. Like, if this could go on any other ship, oh my gosh. It's such a powerful skill, but obviously has to go on a very weak ship balance. Additionally, oh my gosh, it keeps going up. After she fires her barrage from skill 2 5 times the first time. So we started at 2, then we went to 3, then 4, and now we're at 5. Basically, she can consume all of her stacks to have the ultimate attack. And once again, why are we consuming stacks? Like, we worked very hard for these 5 stacks, and then we're just gonna give them all away for this like superpower barrage. Okay, this doesn't make her good, but I mean, who doesn't like plus 10% damage dealt is just a passive, so this is a must pick up if you ever plan on using her. As with all of the augment modules, you must pick them up if you're planning on using the ship, because they just make them better. They're straight buffs. Some better than others, but straight buffs. All right, before we get into the individual equipment, which we have 11 to go through, this is a long video, we still have one more ship to go through, and that is Fortune Meta. She obviously doesn't come out in today's update, but she is now in the game, so we can read her data files, and I will go over them in this video. Fortune Meta stat-wise actually sees a sizable stat boost here. She's going to be even more powerful than Fortune with her retrofit, so that's kind of surprising Fortune Meta here. So let's see if her skills are any good too. Skill number 1, when the Vanguard ships are hit by an attack, so it could be any of the Vanguard ships, and getting hit by attack is basically guaranteed and happens right at the beginning, so this is easy to trigger. She triggers a slash attack. She gets, that's cool, barrage. It has a 10-second cooldown. Yeah, that makes sense. Otherwise, it would just go boom, boom, boom. It's like a counter attack. This triggers a max of 2 times. Then after the second trigger, she's going to fire the barrage every 10 seconds afterward. This is a really weird way to put a barrage. I mean, it's a slash attack, but she's going to go, slash attack when she takes that first shot. Then 10 seconds later, she's probably going to be attacked right then. She's going to slash attack again. And then it's every 10 seconds afterwards. So it's really just a 10-second barrage. Next, increased damage dealt as HP lowers. This is very similar to Patricia earlier. This one maxes at 15% damage instead of 20% damage, but okay. She's also a destroyer, so think about this. She's not actually dealing that much damage. Fortune is not a damage-dealing ship. When a ship falls under 50% HP, that's a lot higher than a lot of them. A lot of them are like 25 or 30%. She triggers a special barrage. This barrage now replaces the barrage in her all-out assault, and she's going to get 20% buff to her firepower, torpedo, and reload, and this only triggers once per battle. This is any ship, so that's kind of interesting. It doesn't have to be her, and who doesn't like a 20% buff to all the DPS affecting stats? And then, of course, she has an all-out assault. Every 10 main gun attacks, that all assault gets buffed if someone is low on HP, and she gives her extra 6% damage to elites and bosses in OpSci, which is pretty standard for meta ships. Overall, nothing to write home about. She's just another meta ship you can pick up in the cruise missions. Hopefully one day we will have an option to retire these ships. All right, we are done with the 7 ships and the 6 augment modules, but we still have 11 aux gear to go through. And based on a lot of the skills I've read from the ships, these are going to be important, probably full of barrages, so let's take a look at them. So the first auxiliary is a Grand Bomb. It can be equipped by any ship in the auxiliary slot. It gives torpedo stat and evasion. This is actually pretty nice. I like this. When equipped by Ryza, this auxiliary will launch a barrage at the 10-second mark after the battle starts, and it will debuff anyone it hits with an item mark. This is like one of the barrages that triggers those item mark skills that we were talking about earlier. It's only triggered for 5 seconds, so that's pretty short. Also, during that 5 seconds, it will be doing burn damage. And the cool part about this one is, this is Ryza specific, but even though it's an auxiliary equipment, if it's equipped in the torpedo slot, you're going to get a ghost torpedo slot. It's 152 times 4 magnetic torpedoes at a 30-second reload time, which is actually pretty slow, but the torpedoes aren't terrible. And this basically gives Ryza a quad magnetic torps. Part of me wishes that Ryza wasn't the only one that got this skill, because otherwise you could equip this in the torpedo slot of somebody you wanted to give evasion, but only Ryza can really use this item, and it goes in the torpedo slot only. Moving on, we have the Crystal Ice Bomb. Similarly to the other item, it goes on Ryza, but it can go on any ship, but it basically goes on Ryza. it gives a bunch of evasion, and it has a skill called Slowdown. When equipped by Ryza, launch a barrage at the 15-second mark, which is nice. The first one's at 10 seconds, this one's at 15 seconds, so they kind of, stack that schedule of damage nicely. And enemies hit by this barrage have the item mark. That makes sense. That's the whole gimmick of this event. For 5 seconds, and for those 5 seconds, also, there's going to be a 30% slow. So the first one is obviously fire, and it's going to do 5 seconds of burn. This one is ice, and it's going to do a 5 seconds of 30% slow. Next up is the equipment I can only assume is the Thunder Bomb, given the artwork. It gives a bunch of anti-air. It can once again be equipped on anybody. And when it's equipped by Ryza, launch a barrage 20 seconds after the battle. So we have one at 10, 15, and now 20, every 5 seconds basically. The enemy hit with the barrage gets marked for 5 seconds. And for those 5 seconds, that enemy gets 10% less crit rate. So it's basically taking off the crit. Kind of feels like Paralyze in Pokemon. Also, most importantly, when it's equipped in the anti-air gun slot, it's going to grant Ryza a ghost anti-air gun that's very similar to the Sextuple Bofors, which is one of the best anti-air guns in the game. This is obviously the equipment you put in the anti-air gun slot in Ryza so that she can continue to have multiple auxiliaries. So actually, this is really cool with the Grand Bomb and the Thunder Bomb because you actually can use all 4 equipments on Ryza, but you're not losing out on like the base equipment because it equips the Ghost version as well, which is something that Rika didn't do. So she effectively gets to keep her anti-air and her torpedo and her main gun and now have 4 auxiliary equipments on top of that. So this is actually really good for Ryza. So finally, we have the Wind Bomb. This one gives HP and speed. It's a speed equipment. That's really cool. And just remember, it can go on anybody. So HP plus speed is actually a real equipment. Like certainly the boiler is going to give 8 speed instead of 4, but this one has extra HP, so pick your poison. This one could be used on somebody not Ryza, although not necessarily what you want to do. When it is equipped on Ryza, it launches a barrage at the 25-second mark. So basically we have 10, 15, 20, 25. It's going to last 5 seconds like all the other buffs, and it marks them. So basically, if you have all 4 of these, you will have basically 20 seconds of marking continuously. When simultaneously equipping all of the bombs, the Ice Bomb, the Fire Bomb, the Thunder Bomb, and now the Wind Bomb, the firepower and torpedo stat gets increased by 10% at the start of the battle, and you get to launch a special attack 30 seconds after the battle. So basically, at the start of the battle, she is going to have an extra 10% buff if you equip all 4 of her equipment. And then at the 30-second mark, she's going to get this super special attack. So she's going to basically get all of her element barrages. They're all going to do their different things. And then at the end, at 30 seconds, when they all wear off, she's going to have this huge special bomb. So obviously for Ryza, you need her Augment Module and all 4 of her equipment. Otherwise, she's just not worth using. But honestly, Ryza's pretty good for an event exclusive collab ship, and just make sure that you have all the things that you need to synthesize all these things, because that's going to be tedious, but just play the event and you'll get through it. Moving on, we have the next item. Looks like a harmonica here. It gives anti-air stat and hit stat. Importantly, it can go on any ship, so that means that it can go on carriers and give them hit stat. It reminds me a lot of the microphones from the Muse event. However, the stats are actually lower than the microphones. I don't know if they did that because this event is never going to come back and they wanted to make the microphones better, which, the Muse events will come back. So this one is definitely worse than the microphones. It does change the background music just like the microphones as well. So depending on if you like that music, you can give up your 1 hit stat to have a different song. So yeah, I don't know. I would have just kept it the same as the microphones, to be honest. That way, if they like the music, they could switch without actually taking a stat hit. But otherwise, this is fine. It goes on anybody. It's the standard music item. The next item goes by NA, and it can only be equipped by battleships and like hulls. It gives firepower and hit stat, so that's nice. Not an especially great amount, but good. When it's equipped by an Atelier ship, 40 seconds after the battle, starts fire a barrage. Enemies hit by that barrage are marked, so this allows us to mark with items that aren't necessarily designed specifically and only for Ryza. This can be used by the other Atelier girls. The mark lasts 5 seconds like all of these marks. And the marked opponent takes 5% more damage for 10 seconds. It actually goes longer than the mark, which is kind of odd. If the ship that this is equipped on also has the Apocalypse book equipped, at the 50-second mark, you get an extra super special barrage. I've been saying that a lot this event. Yeah, so an extra barrage at 50 seconds is kind of late, but it is what it is. Let's see if the book is any good. So that's the next item we have. That one can only be equipped by battleships and friends again. It gives straight just firepower. And when it's equipped by an Atelier ship, 30 seconds after the battle starts, lose 30 HP, fire a barrage, and enemies hit by the barrage are debuffed for 5 seconds and have their firepower, torpedo stat, and anti-air reduced by 3% for 30 seconds. This is probably the combo like you're going to put NA and Apocalypse together on Patricia or something like that. That would be basically what these are for. These are Patricia items. Next up, we have the Genesis Hammer, and we're back to being able to be equipped on anything. It gives just torpedo stat, which obviously there are so many better generic equipments than that. So let's look at the skill, which only applies to Atelier ships. So it's basically pretty much locked to this event. 20 seconds after the battle starts, fire a barrage. Enemies hit by the barrage have the item mark for 5 seconds and get negative 10% crit rate for those 5 seconds. This is not very good. I don't even know if I would even equip this on an Atelier girl, like minus 10% crit rate at the 20-second mark. I guess it marks. It's going to mark. So if you have somebody that needs to mark that's not a battleship and not Ryza, this could be something that you would use. Next up, we have Bubble Bullet. This can be equipped by anybody as well. It gives hit stat and firepower stat. That's nice. When equipped by an Atelier ship, 30 seconds after the battle, fire a barrage. Enemies hit by the barrage are debuffed for 5 seconds with the item mark, and they have 10% less evasion for those 5 seconds. If this one is paired with that previous Genesis Hammer, then at the 35-second mark, you're firing that super special barrage. This doesn't really seem worth it unless, once again, you need the marking. But we have 2 more items left, so hopefully they do marking better. But if not, then you might need to use these 2 for any of your Vanguard ships that aren't Ryza, or even maybe the carriers if you need marking. Moving on, we have the Elixir. This one just gives aviation stats, so that's kind of odd. When equipped on an Atelier ship, 50 seconds after the battle starts, heal all Atelier ships 5%, max trigger once per battle. So it's literally just a heal. It can only go on carriers, light carriers, and aviation battleships. And it gives aviation stat, which is not bad, and it's just a heal. So literally extra heal. This is totally designed for Klaudia. This is a Klaudia item. This is more heals on Klaudia. Definitely. It only heals Atelier girls, but it will heal Klaudia herself. So yeah, whatever. We're going to take this, put it on Klaudia, give her the aviation stat, and take the heal. This is an item you definitely want to pick up because Klaudia is a ship that you definitely want to pick up. All right, let's move on to the last one, the Mystic Robe. This one can only be equipped by carriers again, so probably for Klaudia. So let's see, it gives aviation and evasion. I really like that, and its skill is literally called Increase Evasion. So let's see. When equipped with an Atelier ship, which is Klaudia, plus 3% evasion rate to all Atelier ships for the first 50 seconds. Okay, that is a great, faction buff. Awesome evasion rate to everybody, including herself. I love it. If this one's equipped with the Elixir, we're already going to be doing that. Then at the start of the battle, the lead Vanguard ship is given a 5% HP shield for the first 20 seconds. Okay, so basically she's going to give a shield at the beginning if you put the Elixir in the Mystic Robe there, and it's going to increase their evasion rate. She's already a great healer, and if for some reason at the 50-second mark you haven't already won the battle, she's going to get extra heals like Mystic Robe, Elixir, Klaudia. That is going to be one of the best healers in the game. I don't know, Perseus better watch out here. I mean, the Mystic Robe is specific to Atelier girls only, but a lot of the other stuff that Klaudia does goes generic. So Klaudia is definitely the best healer for an Atelier fleet and is very close to what Perseus is doing. So Klaudia, very good, especially with both of these items. And with that, that marks all of the items. Man, this is a long video. This might be the longest data mine video to date. And I thank you guys for sticking around and watching. I have timestamps, so if you want to go back and watch anything. But my general conclusion is this event seems very fun. We have a fun gimmick. We have a lot of like different items. They're all unique. Some of them are pretty good, not necessarily meta breaking. I don't know. Klaudia's a little strong. Klaudia's definitely my target ship. Ryza's pretty good. She reminds me a lot of Rika. A lot of people still use Rika. Rika's still pretty decent. She's very unique. Ryza reminds me a lot of Rika. The CB, Kala, is kind of interesting. She's got some fun gimmicks. But definitely Klaudia you should pick up, and then everything else is just as you need. Do remember we are getting a UR event in like a month, maybe even less. So like be careful with your cubes. You're going to want to have 400 cubes by the end of December. So make sure you're on pace to do that. But if you can pick up this event, great. And that's all from me tonight. I won't dally anymore because this has been a long video. Thank you guys for watching. Take care. Until next time.